you're going to have to accept that there's going to be a lot of outside talk about which creates misery, and that's a difficult place to be as a head coach.
And welcome in, everybody, to a Tuesday edition of Barrett's 365 here on JAKIB Sports as we roll into week number 2 here of the NFL offseason for the Philadelphia Eagles. National championship wrapped up, John, which means one of the big football leagues is now officially done, and we have a few games remaining in the big league in the NFL. John, football is all coming to an end shortly. How are you doing on this Tuesday morning, my friend?
Well, football never comes to an end.
That's
A lot
good.
of people will
Yeah, I
tell you
think
the
it's
off
game. I
season's
guess it's good.
more interesting than in season. I tend to agree with that from an interest standpoint, from a machination standpoint. But yeah, congratulations to the Indiana Hoosiers, a basketball school,
Yeah.
winning the national championship in an era where the blue bloods are always there, and the Indiana comes out of nowhere. That's pretty impressive. Pretty
No doubt.
impressive.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Hoosiers.
16-0 ran the table too.
Yep, amazing season for Indiana. Congrats to them. My man, did I want Miami to win that game just for Big Sills? You know, I have adopted Miami as team number 2 for me because of the great Big Sills. So I was hoping they'd get the win last night. They did not. Congrats to Indiana. John, great game. That reminds me your thought on the basketball school, the movie Hoosiers. I don't know if you've ever seen that movie. I know you're not a sports movie guy.
Yes, I've seen that movie. That's appalling that you would ask that. But yes,
Great.
I've seen the movie.
Yeah, I like the movie Hoosier. Well, you told me you hate sports movies, isn't that right? Because you're working.
Generally, I do dislike sports movies.
Yeah,
Some of them are kind of hokey, but The Natural, for instance, a lot of people like that movie. Too hokey for me.
there you go. Too hokey for J Mac. All right, good stuff. All right, John. Eagles updates today as we continue to move. There are changes happening in the NFL. Yesterday, we identified some candidates that were going on in the Eagles search. You know, the fan favorite, John, Mike McDaniel, the home run swing you called it yesterday. Not the home run swing, but the bold swing would be
Sharp
Charlie Lee.
single,
Yeah,
sharp, sharp single to left field.
sharp
I don't think
single
there is a home run swing. So
Sharp single to left. You got Bobby Slowick, the former hot name, Mike Kafka, Zach Robinson, Brian Dable. John, these are the names right now we are looking at with some more emerging for the Eagles offensive coordinator search. And with four head coaches now hired, John Stefanski, Harbaugh, Halfley, and Robert Saleh, 4 names off the board. What is next for this Eagles team, John? Do any of those head coaching hires impact this Eagles coaching search for the OC?
Um, yeah, I wrote about that yesterday. Well, I think Buffalo does, from a standpoint of moving on from Sean McDermott, only because it was pretty immediate that people started floating Brian Daboll for that job. Um, I think some are good. Tennessee going with Robert Saleh. Not that for them it was down to Matt Nagy or Robert Saleh. It's always good. Detroit hiring Drew Petzik to be their offensive coordinator was good for the Eagles because there was no obvious interest in him, at least overt interest. And Detroit was one of the teams that interviewed Mike McDaniel. A lot of people speculated because obviously that's a good spot for an offensive mind with all the talent they have. So, the fact that they went in a direction where, again, the Eagles had no overt interest is a positive. Buffalo, negative if Daboll's really involved. So, yeah, a lot of these you say, what does that have to do with the Eagles? Oh, quite a bit, actually, because all these teams, there's 10 stinking teams. Ultimately, 4 have made a decision. They also got to put together their coaching staffs. And they're going to be looking for offensive and defensive coordinators and position coaches. So that's going to impact you and what you need and what you want. And there's going to be a lot of competition. And most of this comes from outside voices, not inside the NovaCare complex, because the Eagles generally don't leak things. The perception around the league is Daboll would be a good fit for the Eagles. McDaniel might be, even though the fit doesn't seem natural. might be somebody they value. These are mainly coming from outside voices. But those guys there's a ton of competition for those guys. So, then you have to have these layers of contingencies, and that's where I think the Bobby Slowicks fit in, the Josh Grizzards fit in. The Eagles will spin it. Whomever they get, the Eagles will spin it like this was our guy. That's just part of it.
Right.
The truth will probably come down the line that unless they get one of those two guys, it probably wasn't their guy, but we'll see how it shakes out. But the urgency increases day by day as these other teams make decisions. And again, a lot of competition for because there's been so much movement, so much movement around the league. It's absurd, to be honest. And the Eagles are a part of it at a secondary level, but everything impacts that. And obviously, if Brian Daboll gets the head coaching job in Buffalo, he's not going to be available to be the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia.
Right. I have a weird hunch, John, that Bobby Slowick is going to emerge. Now, I don't have any information. I just have a hunch that I could see that name coming in with what he was able to do with CJ first year. And then you look at where CJ is now. Maybe I could see him emerging as an under-the-radar candidate. What do you think of that?
Well, I think he's a contingency guy. That's where I would put him.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And, I mean, if other guys, my early betting line would be McDaniel landing in Tampa. Daboll, I think the Eagles have a real shot at, but we'll see. Obviously, if he gets a head coaching job, not the case. And Chargers would be the other, and maybe wants to work with Justin Herbert, so that could impact things. A lot of things could impact things. And then you're down to, as I said, I look at those two names and I say, those smack of contingencies to me, Josh Grizzard and Bobby Slowick.
No, Josh Grizzard would be. Yeah, I mean, the people in Tampa, as always, John, with coordinators, the people of Tampa have been ripping Josh Grizzard.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay much attention to that.
Well, they didn't have a great season. And as you pointed out yesterday,
MVP for 5 weeks.
Yeah, 5-week MVP. Put that on the resume, everybody. Put that on the mantle for Josh Grizzard. He had Baker Mayfield in talks for MVP through 5 weeks of the NFL season. Pretty funny there. John, let's look, and we're going to obviously talk about the OC. We got Devin Jackson on today in hour number 2. For those who don't know Devin Jackson, if you're new to our program, we have Devin on all the time. We had him on a bunch last summer as well. He is an amazing draft kind of guru, I would call him, who really dives deep into the draft all year round and has a great understanding of the draft. So we're going to talk a little bit to Devin Jackson about that. John, when we look at this OC or this offseason checklist, all right, offensive coordinator is obviously number 1. Where do you go number 2? Is it fixing the running game? Is that what you would have as number 2 for this offseason priority list for this team? Is it the draft? Is it, defensive reinforcements? Is it A.J. Brown's future obviously could be a big one? Mine, John, I think might be Jalen Hurts' legs, because I think you got to play a different brand of football if he wants to win from the pocket and doesn't want to run the ball as much anymore. Where do you go number 2 for the importance for this offseason for the Birds?
Well, they're all important as far as what the Eagles they'll try to get a quick decision or as quick as possible from people like Lane Johnson. Is he going to play next year? People like AJ, does he want to be here? They'll try to get their finger on that as quickly as possible. As far as the importance, which I think is more of a bigger deal for the actual on-field product. I think they have to fix the running game first. I mean, again, I'm not talking about 2,005-yard running game. I'm talking about Miles Sanders. I've said it pretty consistently. Right. This team has been a dominant running team since 2021. They were not a dominant running team. I think
How
if
far off
everything,
are they from that though? Like I know it felt like they were no good in the moment because of what they did, but wasn't he a top 10 rusher this year, Saquon Barkley?
yeah, the numbers are again efficiency is they were not. He was
Okay.
not a top 10 running back. Um, the efficiency was pretty poor at times. You know, a ton of negative, a
Yeah,
ton
that's
of
the
negative
real thing.
plays.
Yeah, the negative
Um,
plays are insane.
just look at it if you want to go 14th ranked efficiency wise, which is mediocre. You're a little bit above average. Okay, that's not the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, it could be worse, um, but that's not the Philadelphia Eagles, who have been, again, 21, 22, 23, 24, top 5 running game. And 24, obviously, historic. So nobody's saying you have to be historic, but you got to get back to that level, and that would open up some of the other things. Now, again, I'm operating on what the Eagles typically are and have been since 2021. You know, there's an opportunity here to push things in a different direction. If they want to push things in a different direction, then it all becomes about Jalen Hurts, and that's an interesting conversation to have. You know, do you want to force him to evolve, or do you want to sort of like I've made the comparison with Howie sending him off to the broom closet, so to speak, and the mindset Jeffrey Lurie's publicized mindset behind that. Well, I have to see what I have in Chip Kelly. Terrible decision, but that was his mindset.
Right.
I have to see what I have. Do they go in there and say, I have to see what I have in Jalen Hurts? Can he do this? Can he do what all the Hurtsites say he can do? Can he play a Shanahan style offense?
Do you believe he can do that?
No. Well, I don't believe it's again for a game. Sure, a game here or there. Sure. Is it the best way to utilize him? No.
Right. In the long term.
That's insanity to me. So I'm operating on they will land where they always land and try to maximize what they have. And they have a lot in Jalen Hurts. Again, people are going to get upset by that because they hear what they want to hear. They're not going to hear this part. They have a lot in Jalen Hurts. You maximize what you have in Jalen Hurts. You don't pound the square peg in the round hole.
Why does it feel like they're relentlessly trying to do that?
Because, Jeffrey, that's what Jeffrey wants.
Right.
One of the things that I it's been well publicized that because of the expectations at times that things have been, difficult for this team and how they've handled things. And, they're no, everybody's Eeyore, I always joke, everybody's depressed, everybody. And Nick Sirianni tries to preach joy, going back to what he learned from Steve Kerr and, take pride in what you've accomplished and all that stuff. And I've always, he's doing it from a team mindset, from the reality of how hard it is to win NFL football games. But I've kind of started to think about it as nobody has fucking fun playing this offense. These are human beings.
Yeah, right.
Everybody, shut up and play. How many times you hear that from them? Shut up and play. You're winning. Nobody's having fucking fun playing this offense.
Yeah, right. Fun. You could be the old school. You want to be Eeyore. I could be old school Eeyore. Yeah. Fun. Fuck it. Why don't we need to have fun? Let's go play 60 and win the ball game. But, I get it. You're right.
It's not realistic. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I got you.
These are human beings. Like people say, why would Mike McDaniel rather go to Tampa Bay? Why would Brian Daboll rather go to the Chargers? There's other things. If these are human beings, man.
So then with that, how do they maximize Jalen Hurts, like you said, because there is a lot more there that they can get which I agree with you on, assuming he's going to use his full skill set. How do you maximize that while also threading the needle of what you just talked about?
Well, I don't. I think you maximize what you have every single year. I think it's pretty simple. People make it complicated.
So
This
people are
is
just
what
you're just going to have to accept that people are going to be miserable, right?
you're going to have to accept, that there's going to be a lot of outside talk about, which creates misery, and that's a difficult place to be as a head coach. But
Yeah, but wait,
you,
there's outside talk that creates misery, and then there's real misery. I think there's real misery. I don't think it's all fueled by the outside talk.
well, again, it's not all fueled by the outside
Like for
talk. But
example,
when you
these
do
guys
when
played though in an echo chamber, and there was no outside talk. I think
when
AJ Brown would hate to play this way.
when you do, yeah, but AJ's not everybody. You're probably right with AJ. But when you do win at a high level, like everybody was having fun winning at a high level, not everybody, but most people were having fun. Others were not. And when you think about it, it's understandable why, from the standpoint of wanting to contribute, wanting to be valued and all that kind of stuff. Again, human emotions. But winning usually takes care of that. As you saw this year, the Eagles won at a pretty high level compared to most teams. But 11-7 ain't going to do it. Domination would do it, but just being good isn't going to do it. You got to be really good. And that's, that is a difficult needle to thread. But how do you get there? And then, you have different visions. You get 90 people together, and you ain't going to have 90 people on the same page. And number one on the page at the NovaCare complex might be on a different page. And that's Jeffrey Lurie. And if he's in that mindset, and the only reason I bring it up is because he's done it before, which I think it is, he's been one of the best owners in sports, never mind the NFL. But his biggest mistake was Chip Kelly, and his biggest mistake was giving him personnel, and his mindset of, I have to see what I have, is just, especially when you trust the other guy so much. Think about how bad of a decision that is.
I think it's more about coaches, though, John. That's why he loves Howie so much, because Howie never has taken his baby and dropped it on its head like Chip Kelly did. He's got PTSD, John. He's never going to recover. He's not giving anything to coaches. People wonder, why is Jeffrey Lurie and Julian Lurie hiring the OC? Well, I'll tell you exactly why. We all know. Why was Doug Peterson fired a couple years after moving the Super Bowl or winning the Super Bowl? I know why. Somebody dropped Jeffrey Lurie's baby on its head. Obviously
Jeffrey hired Chip Kelly. Jeffrey gave Chip Kelly that
I know,
power.
but that's what broke him. I think that's what.
He was that way before. He's always been involved, and he should be. And there's not an owner that isn't involved with head coaching hires. That's his decision, and it should be his decision.
Yeah, but what about OCs? Like that's not.
Well, that gets more layered. A lot of owners are involved. As you go down the chart, they should never be involved in position coaching. Never be, and most of them aren't. Now, occasionally somebody will develop a reputation like Jeff Stoutland, and you demand that somebody keeps them, something like that. But for the most part, you should stick out of it. Coordinators are a little bit different. They probably shouldn't be involved. They are involved a little bit too much because they don't have the expertise to get in the weeds with scheme and concepts. They don't have the ability to get in the weeds. But when you own something and you're worth billions of dollars and you own an asset that's worth billions of dollars, it's kind of hard to say somebody, hey, shut up. You don't know what you're talking about. It's not possible. Even though everybody pretty much recognizes it, what are you going to do? You have to operate the constraint. You have to operate. Everybody has to operate within the constraints that they have to an optimal level. Unless you own the team and you're a football wonk, you're going to have issues with the owner. And that doesn't exist.
Right.
So, I mean, the Eagles are no different than anybody else. And they have a better owner than most. So, if people are complaining, I haven't seen a lot of people, but if people are complaining that Jeffrey Lurie and Julian Lurie are in these interviews, I mean, grow up. What do you think is going to happen?
I don't know if it's complaining that they're in there. I think it's more that there's an idea that, you always push back on what does Nick Sirianni do, and most coaches, it feels like around the league, get to pick their own coordinators, get to, run the football side of things. I understand it's different in Philadelphia, but I think that's where it comes. People always say, what does Nick do? And again, I'm more with you where I think the job is so big that it's pretty self-explanatory. There's a whole lot of shit to do outside of, calling the offensive game plan. But that's what people say. He doesn't run the defense. Now he doesn't run the offense. He doesn't pick the coordinators on the offense. That's what that's
well, first of all, again, there's a lot of misinformation. You can't control people's perceptions. There's a lot of misinformation there.
Yeah, very true.
Like, now, I'm again, it's very layered, but technically Nick's in control of the coaching staff. And that gauges from year to year. Obviously, at times, coming off 2023 and now coming off this season, Jeffrey's going to be more involved. Obviously, coming off the Super Bowl win, he was less involved. So that's fluctuating, and any time Jeffrey can walk into the building and put his foot down and say, "I want this," and that's going to happen. Now he does it a little bit differently. He explains that he's a question asker, but again, like if I ask you a question, as somebody hosting the show with you, it's got a different import if we had, a billionaire owner tells you, hey, what if we do this? Now, what would and I know it's hard for people to put themselves in that perspective, but the best example is probably Doug Peterson, who took it kind of harshly. Jeffrey would have meetings every Tuesday with Doug, and they upset Green Bay in Green Bay. At the time, Green Bay was a big-time team. Aaron Rodgers still playing at a high level. Everybody remembers that game. They upset Green Bay in Green Bay, and they did it by running the football. And, Jeffrey being Jeffrey at the time, this is long before the Eagles turned into the Eagles from a rushing attack standpoint. And obviously he's very focused on the passing game. Basically asked why we run it so much after a win. And Doug was like, what the fuck? And it might, and over the years, I've got news that's just Jeffrey. He's just asking questions. He asks questions, and I get that now. But what I think those people defending Jeffrey Lurie don't understand is the weight that the questions he asks carry with people because of his position. So again, they ask, well, what about Bobby Slowick? And you're like, well, man, I better pay more attention to fucking Bobby Slowick. So it's very layered. but the stuff that Nick doesn't get to choose the coordinator. I mean, that's just WIP, blah blah. That's just perception that has become reality. That's all that is. And, as far as the perception that X's and O's are a bigger part of that job than they are, that's just perception. Now, as you see the rest of the league, I look at Sean McVay or Ben Johnson. They're lucky they were playing each other because they were a game management shit show. Both of them.
It's true.
And everybody's like, well, they got a tackle eligible, blah, blah, blah. How about manipulating the clock a little bit better at the end of the game if you're Sean McVay? How about not going into a shell with the one quarterback you can count on in a big situation in these playoffs, or at least with proven, demonstrated performance? They were a shit show, both of them. But anybody's worried about is in the X's and O's. If either one of them managed that game correctly, they win. Sean got lucky because Ben managed it just as poorly as he did. And then, obviously Matthew Stafford made the big throw to Devontae Adams, which was incredible, by the way. And you win a football game. But just to be easily could have lost it because of his mismanagement of the game. And everybody's worried about the concepts, so, but you can't control that stuff. And the Eagles are better than most when it comes to coaching, but they're the same. I said, that's the one part where they pride themselves on being out of the box, forward thinking, but the one spot they're ordinary is coaching. They do it like everybody else. They're overreactive. They're not patient, and it's gotten less patient since they've gotten successful. I tell the story all the time in Minneapolis after they won Super Bowl 52. I said, I'm sitting at the bar. I said, well, I guess Doug's got a lifetime dispensation card. Think about what and people forget how. Think about what Super Bowl 52 meant to this organization. They had nothing. They had zero. Again, at the parade, people dropping their ashes of their dead relatives on the parade route. All the misery these people had gone through supporting this team, never winning. And they finally get over the hump. And then the new normal happened in a different way than Doug projected, which was now go do it again. And that's where they are every year now. Now go do it again. Go do it again. Go do it again. I know it's become a big thing because I guess Jeff did his podcast and said the Eagles were considering firing Nick Sirianni when they were 2-2 last year. Probably considered firing him this year. Those talks are had all the time. And Jeffrey has turned into a better, well, this isn't working, we better shift. So they're like everybody. There were 10. Now obviously some have been filled. There were 10. We got to 10 head coaching positions. And think about all the trickle down from that. Most of those staffs are going to have almost completely new staffs. Everything from coordinators to position coaches, even support staff. There'll be a couple holdovers in each city, but the vast majority, it's very nomadic profession. You see these guys. One guy will get blown out in one city, because think about Atlanta. Atlanta turned into a pretty good team from an offensive line perspective. Well, Kevin Stefanski's good friends with Callahan, I always get his son mixed up. The offensive line coach, who's one of the best offensive line coaches in the NFL. So they're going to blow out their offensive line coach, and somebody's going to hire that guy and say, this is the best offensive line coach in the NFL. It just goes from,
It's sick. Yeah, it's very. Yeah, I understand. It never
you
ends.
go from city to city to city to city as an assistant coach.
It sounds like it would suck to be a football coach. I know they love it and they live the game, obviously, but holy shit. The moving, the firing, the hiring, the changing, the ins and outs.
It's a very nomadic profession. It ain't easy. A lot of, I'll be honest, a lot of alcoholism, a lot of ruined families.
No, I could see it.
You don't have time. You're moving constantly. Yeah, it's not an easy life. Again, you're not in the gulag. You're not digging ditches.
Yeah.
You make good money if you get to a certain level.
Yeah. You got some cash, but
it ain't easy on one's personal life. I'll say that. And then you think about the high profile guys. All you got to do is look at the shit that KP took this year. I mean, that ain't easy on somebody's family.
Oh, no way. Howard Eskin was saying his kids were getting harassed in school.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fucked up, but that's part of this town for you in a way. All right, John, good stuff there. Good opening segment. Christian Parker, John, drew another defensive coordinator interview. Do you feel like the Eagles could be losing some of their defensive staff this summer?
Yeah. I don't know if he's taken it yet. He's going to interview. So what's today? Tuesday. He's going to interview tomorrow in Dallas with the Cowboys, and then after that, he's going to talk to Green Bay about their defensive coordinator position, which is obviously up now because Jeff Hapley is the new head coach in Miami. So he's got 2 interviews set up, Dallas and Green Bay. Unfortunately, both in the NFC, in the division with the Cowboys. And we'll see. I mean, he's still young. He's 34. So I said early on, I can't imagine Dallas just because of Jerry Jones's history. He's not a big enough name for Jerry Jones. That's my bet there. And Green Bay's coming off a ton of success with Hapley. He did a good job. I didn't like that hire, but I was wrong about that one. He did a really good job. Now he's a head coach. And again, do you want to go with an unproven 34-year-old guy after Jeff Hapley? I don't know if that's the way. So it could be, an early stage of Christian Parker's career where he's getting these interviews and that bodes well for the future. But I don't think they're in imminent danger of losing him. But when you're in the building, there's every opportunity to wow people. And that's your risk when guys are going on interviews and getting live interviews, not just Zoom interviews.
John, we're going to see what happens with that with Christian Parker. I think Dallas, is that up there on Dallas with their DC? I felt like they were going to hire Gannon for a second, but I haven't quite kept up with it as much as I should have.
He's interviewing Wednesday. I said he's interviewing Wednesday in Dallas. Gannon's interviewing, I think today. And they've interviewed a couple other more high profile. There's talk.
John, I feel like they're going to go Gannon.
Yeah, well, they're got a big name. There was talk they wanted to talk to Flores as well. I don't think that happened. But I think, as always with Jerry, he's probably going to go big game hunting, which would help when it comes to Christian Parker. I don't think Christian Parker. I think Green Bay is more of a threat than Dallas for Christian Parker.
Yeah, we'll see what ends up happening with that. All right, John, good stuff there. Who are the new emerging candidates then for a coordinator? We named the 6 yesterday. Dable, I feels like Dable's not going to end up here. Who are kind of some of the wild cards then, John? I mean, there's sites that you go on websites. 19 candidates for coordinator, 8 to 12 candidates for coordinator. I'm like, who the fuck are all these?
Yeah,
Who are all these guys? But any
well, I think it's best. I think it's best to focus on the people that they've interviewed
yeah.
or they want to interview.
What about Joe Brady, John?
Yeah, well, he's getting head coaching interviews. I forget where he's going. So again, I haven't heard any interest in him yet. Doesn't mean there isn't. But until there is, I don't, I don't, I haven't taken him too seriously. I mean, there hasn't even been a rumbling of the Eagles thinking about, and it might come today, but there hasn't been a rumbling yet. And I think he wants to explore his head coaching opportunities before they start talking. And it's Baltimore. So his second interview with Baltimore. So I think he's way more focused on that right now. So if he doesn't get the Baltimore job, then maybe the Eagles enter the equation. But as of right now, there hasn't been any sort of Joe Brady smoke at this stage.
And we'll see what ends up happening with that, John. Good stuff on that front. John, the other big topic here for the summer, which I think is going to, we'll see how it unfolds, but is obviously the A.J. Brown saga. We just talked about how players are unhappy in this offense. What does that realistically look like, John, if they are going to move off of A.J. Brown? How realistic do you think it is at this point? I know it's something we're going to be talking about a lot, but just give the people an update on, if they're going to do it, what's the earliest they could do it? It have to be post June 1, right? I mean, they obviously have some cap things tied down on A.J. Brown. What does the timeline look like for that when we're going to start to really see some smoke, around that story?
You're going to hear it, at the start of the new league year right away in March. Obviously, can't do anything until then. Back in the old days, you would have to wait to June 1st. You can trade people post June 1st now. You don't have to worry about that. And designated post June 1st. Now, you don't get the cap relief until June 2nd. So, I've said for a couple months that it's more likely now that he will not be here than will be here. But I think, we're talking about 51-49. We're not talking about 90-10. I mean, number one, when they hired the new offensive coordinator, the first thing they're going to do is lobby AJ and say, look, we got this guy. We got Bobby Slowick. Well, look at the concepts. It's going to be great. And you're going to try to talk him back for another year. So they're going to make that effort. I don't think there's any doubt about that, simply because of the cap ramifications. And this is not the time to trade him. If this were just a situation where you had a receiver that you didn't want anymore because of performance or something like that, this would not be the time to trade him because of his contract. You have to bite the bullet and wait another year. The only reason why there's so much speculation, because if it gets to a point where the guy doesn't want to be here, you got to go in a different direction. So the Eagles are going to try to talk when the new offensive coordinator is in place. They're going to try to talk him to running it back. And if it doesn't work, they'll try to trade him. But they definitely have to put that post June 1st designation. But that doesn't mean they have to wait to June 1st. you're allowed to put that designation on trades now. But again, you don't get the cap relief, and it's pretty significant pre-June 1st to post-June 1st. It's pretty significant. You don't get that until June 2nd. Now, why is that important? That's important because everything's done in March, all of free agency. And if you trade A.J. Brown, you're not going to have that cap space. That's not going to help you sign people in March.
Right.
And June 2nd, everybody's irrelevancy is off the board. So it's a lot more complicated than people think. And number one, the Eagles would want him back if they can work things out. And they'll try to do that with the new offensive coordinator and say it's going to be great. And they'll try to sell the case. And we'll see how it works out.
My guess is it won't work out. All right. We'll find out, though. All right, John, moving into the NFL draft, a little conversation about the draft. We got Devin Jackson coming on today. Can't wait to talk to Devin Jackson. Boy, John, are we still a little bit not prepped yet for the draft? The Eagles are picking 23rd overall. I have no freaking clue in terms of who the hell or what position they're going to look for in this draft. I feel like it's offensive line because of what happened, but I also understand they're paying a lot of people there, and if the right tackle or the tackle they want doesn't fall, they might not end up going that route. Last week at the press conference, John, Howie made a comment. We drafted 15 guys since Nick has been here on the first and second days. 14 of them have been long-term starters. So that's an interesting comment from Howie. Who's the one, by the way?
Sydney.
Sydney Brown. Wow, tough look there for Sydney Brown. But it's an important day, obviously, John, is the NFL draft. What is your early thought on the Eagles draft plans this year?
Yeah, definitely offensive line. After what went on this season, and just the long-term concerns about Landon Dickerson, Cam Jurgens from a health standpoint, Lane Johnson from a potential retirement standpoint. Got to repopulate that offensive line. Got to start. They've been wanting to do that for a couple of years. The board hasn't fallen their way, and that's why you get people like Devin on. It's very early in the process. You shouldn't feel behind. He's going to East West Shrine game, which is this weekend. Senior Bowl's coming up. Got the combine. I mean, there's plenty of time. But how he kind of laid it out. And the vast majority, since the Eagles have been on this run, which is basically 21 forward after Jalen Reagor, since they've been on this run, most of those players he was talking about were defensive players because they were older on defense,
right? And
they had to repop. Now it's got to shift back to the offense for a lot of ways. And also, the Eagles have been, don't get me wrong, they've been very good, but I don't think it's fair to declare Drew Makuba or even Jahad Campbell's long-term starters. But
I agree.
I mean, they look good, though.
We don't even know if Nolan Smith is a long-term starter.
Yeah, exactly. So, a little bit of peacock in there that was not fair. Even Tyler Steen, one of the few offensive players, they're counting him in that. And I thought Tyler did a good job. But are you comfortable saying he's going to be a long-term starter?
Well, I think how we might be right is that if the Eagles don't pay him, I think somebody will pay those guys.
Well, right. I mean, look, it's great. It's just he overstated it, and understandably, you try to make yourself look as good as possible.
I get it. A little talking himself up, no problem with that.
And they have been very good again since 2020, which was Jalen Reagor. And remember that year they also got Jalen Hurts in the second round. But they got Davion Taylor in the third round. So he's talking about, premium picks. So rounds 1, 2, 3. So Reagor was a disaster. Davion Taylor he had like a 4-game spurt when he said, maybe he could turn into something. It didn't work out. But Jalen Hurts kind of makes up for that. Then he had.
Is he still in the league, Davion Taylor? I would imagine no, right?
I do not think he is. He had a bunch of knee problems, so I do, but I'd have to check. But really, when you took off,
Yeah, he's in the CFL, Davion Taylor.
yeah. So 2021 was a big season. He got Devontae Smith, Landon Dickerson, and Milton Williams.
Woo.
1, 2, 3.
Milton Williams is a freaking beast, John. He is a beast,
Yeah.
dude.
Then you had Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, which is very good. And then you had Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Tyler Steen, Sidney Brown, Quinyon Mitchell, Cooper DeJean, Jalix Hunt, which is pretty good. And then Jihad Campbell and Drew Makuba, which looks good. But
the Jalix Hunt pick is turning out to be a pretty impressive pick.
Yeah, it looks good.
That was a shot in the dark. Not a shot in the dark, but that was a little bit of a surprise to use a premium pick on a guy that we really had no idea. I mean, I remember when we drafted him, we were like, he was a safety a couple years ago, and now, he became a Houston Christian, I think it was, or Houston Christian, right? Houston Christian.
Yeah, well, it was Houston Baptist, then it became Houston Christian. Yeah, I mean, he really impressed, I would say, second half of the season. Right after they got Jalen Phillips, when the defense kind of turned the corner, he was really good. Didn't play well in the playoff game, but kind of understandable with Trent Williams out there. But
yeah, I can give you a pass for that, Jalix.
So, yeah, I think he's a good player. I think you can make a strong argument that he's just as good as Nolan. I think, he's a more natural pass rusher than I think Nolan is. Nolan's really good at setting the edge despite his lack of size. But it is, it's really impressive how quickly Jalix Hunt has gotten it from, where he came from as a small school, really developmental guy. He's just, sometimes he's a great athlete. Sometimes great athletes, just great athlete people. And they're just, they're just tough to deal with. And I think that's what you're seeing with Jalix Hunt.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Impressive stuff there. It's going to be interesting to see what they end up doing in the NFL draft this year. I do think it's going to be offensive line early, but we will see. Is there a chance it's cornerback too, John? I mean, I know that's crazy because they just drafted two amazing cornerbacks, and Quinyon and Cooper, both all pros, but they do need to fill that spot. I never envisioned them doing it through the draft, but hey, maybe they could.
Well, it's always how the board falls. I mean, like I always say, a couple of years ago when they got Quinyon, they would have taken that kid from Pittsburgh if he was there, but he got picked 20, 2 spots before him. So they're picking 23rd. You're at the mercy of the others in front of you. So, but one of the things, and Devin, we're going to have Devin on. He did his first sort of, potential 23 picks, and the good news from an offensive line perspective, he came up with a lot of offensive linemen who belong in that conversation, who might be their 23rd, 23, starting with Caden Proctor from Alabama, so you should know him. But
I know him.
So if he's in that conversation, he also mentioned Caleb Lomu from Utah, Monroe Freeling from Georgia. I don't want to butcher the kid's name from Penn State, but he's in there. Oani is his last name. So he came up with a lot of offensive linemen, and that's a good sign for the Eagles because they need to repopulate. But he also had Kenyon Sadiq, the tight end from Oregon. They need a tight end in theory. And that kid's a big-time player. If he's there. So there's a lot of ways you can go, and it's always – but as Howie said when he drafted Cam Jurgens, and everybody was upset by that, if it's equal, we're going to get the guy in the trenches. That's how we roll, Howie said. And they haven't been able to do it, and they wanted to do it because they wanted to get that heir apparent to Lane Johnson, and I haven't been able to do it the past couple of years.
Yeah, man. A couple good names there. I think Proctor would be pretty good. Proctor's one of those guys, John, that he's like uber athletic at 6'7". And like at Bama would do these trick plays, which drove me crazy. They would throw the ball to him in the flat and have him run.
Creative. You don't like it. You don't like creative.
Crazy. I'm like, you got all these playmakers. Why the fuck are we throwing the ball? But I digress. Like Proctor's that type of guy. He's super athletic. Should we take a shot at pronouncing the Penn State kid's name? Oleva Vega.
We got to get Jeff Kerr. Jeff Kerr, where are you?
I don't even know if Jeff will be able to get that sucker. Oleva Vega Ione?
Ione, yeah, I think it's Owani. Because usually the first letter is not is silent. So I believe it's Owani. Well, yeah, Devin will know. So we'll ask Devin.
Yeah.
I'm gonna butcher the first name here.
Here it is. Iwani. That's what Zeal says. He's a Penn State guy. Iwani.
All right.
Vega Iwani. He goes by Vega.
I was gonna go Owani from most. Is he Samoan? I assume he's Samoan, but
John is close. So Zeal says you're close.
All right. So the I is not silent. All right. Ola E Vavega. Ola, yeah,
that's a tough name. That's a Halapuli Vati Vaitai name that you're gonna have to take a little bit of time to learn. John will be at night. He'll be in his house. He'll be practicing the name.
Yeah, I don't think they're now. He's a guard more than I don't think they take him at 23. So I think I'm gonna luck out on that one.
Yeah, still a good name. I love a good name in the draft. So it's always good to see some of the names. Love that.
Yeah. But, hey, guess what? If Landon Dickerson isn't ready and, he's having issues, never say never. But
yeah, no doubt. All right, John, we're going to see with the draft. We're going to talk to Devin Jackson in hour 2. So looking forward to talking to Devin Jackson. John, next order of business I want to talk about, and we're obviously going to dive deeper into all of these things as the offseason rolls on, but just setting the stage here. A lot of free agents, not a lot, but there's some key ones. Reed Blankenship, Jalen Phillips are probably the top 2 names there. Stay or go? Both of them? Stay, both go? One stay, one go? How do you see those two?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think they want to keep Jalen Phillips, but I do think there'll be a walk-away number.
Yeah, me too.
So I'm at about, and I said that last week, if you're going 0 to 100%, I'm about 70 on Jalen Phillips being back. But you have to leave open there aren't a ton of edge defenders, proven edge defenders, and obviously that's a value position. So he might get overpaid, and if he gets overpaid, you have to have a walk-away number. Reed did not have a good season, so I don't think money is going to be the issue. So I do think he's going to be back. Probably about 90% on him. And then Nakobe would be the other one on defense. I don't see. The only way I see him being back is everybody around the league is spooked by his injury history, and he's got to come back on a 1-year deal, prove-it deal. And then I think it's possible. But I think that's very unlikely. Somebody will give him 2 years at starter money. So I put him more in the range of 10, 15% back.
Yep, we'll see what ends up happening there. It's going to be interesting to see. I think I don't know. My hunch on Jalen Phillips is actually that he's not going to be back. I want him to be back, and I think they should pay him, but that's just my hunch right now. I mean, what's he going to make? $25 million in the open market, probably. Well,
that's the key. What's his value?
What do you think the walkaway number should be?
I'm not going to 25. I'll go low 20s.
That's what I was thinking, 21, 22. But come on, we all know there's a team out there who's gonna pay him
not
big
necessarily. If you don't have big sack numbers, they're just like most of these teams are dummies.
Yeah, right.
They're
buy that crap.
Yeah.
Hey, the Eagles weren't immune from that either. They signed Bryce Huff after having 2 double-digit sack years.
Yeah, nobody's immune from it. So I don't think it's a fait accompli. He's getting over $25 million by any stretch. So, yeah, I think it's more likely that he's back than not back.
We'll see. A lot of guys that pay on defense, though, John. I mean, you're going to pay all. I know. Now, what I do think is true, which you brought up a good point. We have a tendency, me guilty as charged here, to kind of jump ahead. Like I got everybody paid on defense before they're actually paid. I'm thinking Quinion, Coop, Jalen, Jordan, all these guys. There's time, and when they do sign them, they normally kind of kick it down a little bit. They give them a big signing bonus and then let it kind of drag out. So we'll see. I think Jalen Carter gets paid this summer, though, John. Do you?
Boy, no, I don't. I think because of what went on this season.
So on Eagles to not pay him early. They did it with Davis, but
yeah, but there's a lot more complications with the injuries now. Yeah, I mean, you got to see what's going on with those shoulders because he was not the same player.
You think he's waiting to get operated on until the contract talk? That's a Drew Rosenhaus thing to do. He doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to go under the knife, and then Howie's like, "Well, you just got double surgery. I'm not giving you $30 million."
I don't know. It's very complicated, and that's one of the reasons why Drew was here. Obviously, he needs something. Nobody's going to sit there. Just hang out.
Yeah, right.
That's why it is a complicated situation, and he did not play well this year for long stretches. And I think it's all tied to the shoulders, but the reality is he didn't play well. So, I mean, yes, normally you identify big time players, and the Eagles are going to do it early, but this guy was not a big time player this year.
No, he was not. What was it? Was this year 3 for Jalen Carter?
Yeah.
So the Eagles hold all the cards. I mean, they have next year they can pick up the 5th-year option, and then they can
exactly. There's time.
If they really wanted to, they could. I mean, they
did the same thing with Jordan Davis.
Yeah.
Now
right.
Jordan didn't. Now it's different because Jordan Davis played well this year after they picked up his option. But in their discussion about not picking up his option was around underachieving his first couple seasons. Now you've turned it on head. Like if Carter continued to play like he played in the second season, yeah, it's a no-brainer. He didn't. And part of the reason why is because of the injury. But you don't have to do it this early. And the assumption that the Eagles always do it this early, they don't always do it this early. They do it when there's not complicating factors. And injuries are complicating factors. Not to mention, look,
you think they could try and get a cheaper deal though? I could see that too.
I
mean, like for example, they're gonna bet on that he's gonna be a good player for the next 4 or 5 years. Maybe they're wrong, but I think they could bet on that. I think it'd be safe to bet that to some extent. I mean, he's not going to be maybe what we thought, but he's going to be a pretty solid defensive tackle. I mean, even when he's out there, he's not a bad player. He's just not the dominant Jalen Carter we were expecting. Could they use that, try and get him on a cheaper deal?
Well, I don't think that's going to work with Drew Rosenhaus, number one.
True.
But
again, Eagles hold the card. All right, Drew, that's fine.
Well, they do hold the cards, but they hold the cards from the perspective of waiting. Like nobody's giving discounts.
All right, well, you got 2 bum shoulders.
Well, then you don't want to sign him.
Well, I don't know what Jalen Carter with 2 bum shoulders might be better than most of the alternatives.
I think people should relook at how he played after the shoulders became untenable because it was not good. It was terrible in the playoff game. Again, the Chicago game was the alarm, but and then he came back for the one game. Remember, he only came back for the one game, in week 17, and he played okay, and that was fine. You say, all right, he's a little bit back, and then they kept him out of week 18, and he played in the playoff game, and it was a disaster again. So I'm waiting. That is no longer. You got to get that done. You got time, and I think the Eagles will take that time.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll find out what they end up doing there. John, when do you expect the offensive coordinator search to come to an end? It feels like we're getting close.
Yeah, I don't think it'll last. Again,
end of the week.
Yeah, well, to my knowledge, they haven't even. They can't hire one yet because they haven't satisfied the Rooney Rule. To my knowledge, again,
yesterday, John, that who did it? Somebody said, "Is Mike McDaniel qualified for the Rooney Rule, or is it Mike Kafka? One of the two."
Mike McDaniel. Yeah, I was the one who said it. Yeah, Mike is. He's got Latino in his background.
Yeah,
yeah. He's satisfied, but they haven't interviewed him. You have to interview him.
Kafka doesn't qualify, does he?
No. Robert Saleh does. A lot of people don't realize that.
That's true.
Because he's Lebanese. So, yeah, I mean, to my knowledge, and again, the Eagles do not confirm coaching like a lot of teams do, and most teams do, and the Eagles refuse to do it. I don't like that, closed circuit Eagles, and I don't think it does you any good, but whatever, it's up to them.
You would think with the Rooney Rule thing, they would have to. I mean, is there maybe?
Well, they have to the league, but they don't have to do it publicly. What I'm trying to say is, to date, of all the interviews that have been reported, and there's only been 4, I think, that have been reported, actual interviews, not interest, actual interviews. They have not satisfied the Rooney Rule, to my knowledge, at this stage. So even if they wanted to hire a coordinator today, they couldn't. Now, they might have interviewed, and remember, now you have to do it outside the organization. So it's not like you can interview Jamal Singleton and satisfy the Rooney Rule.
Right.
So
I don't recall them satisfying it last year when they hired Kevin Petula.
Well, they did. They don't. Yeah, but believe me, we had that discussion with the Eagles, because they did satisfy it. We just don't know with who.
Okay.
You're not allowed to do it until you satisfy it.
Interesting. I mean, if they're going to make it a rule, then they should have to be public on who you satisfy.
They should. They should. The NFL, and I'm pushing for the NFL to make it mandatory for teams to. But I'm one guy. There's more than me, and most teams do it. That's what the frustrating part. Most teams, when they interview people, they confirm the interview and they put it on fucking X, and everybody knows.
Right.
But the Eagles are working with a CIA level subterfuge, competitive advantage mindset. And they claim some of the college guys that, a lot of times it's with college guys. Like a couple of years ago when they hired Kellen Moore, Nate Shieldhouse, who's now a bigger name because he's getting head coaching interviews with the Rams, because he had a cup of coffee with Sean McVay. And, he was at Iowa State with Matt Campbell, who's a good friend of Nick Sirianni from Mount Union. And they interviewed him as sort of, I don't want to say just to satisfy the Rooney Rule, but let's be honest, if you're being just to satisfy the Rooney Rule. So they may have already done it, but nobody knows about it.
Is weird about that rule. It's like, don't some of these candidates feel like they're literally being used to just satisfy the damn rule?
Well, yeah, I've been writing about that for 20 years. Leslie Frazier, I talked to Leslie Frazier about that when he was sort of the Rooney Rule guy. They've changed the rules over. Now it's much more difficult.
It's almost like a little bit degrading. It's like,
well, back then I said,
you're a black guy. Let me just call you in so I can satisfy this fucking rule, even though you're not even an option. Like, I don't know. To me, it just makes it more
Well,
disingenuous.
it is. It is untoward, and it was much more untoward back then. So I actually asked Leslie about it. Um, and look, it's up to the person. And in his case, he, you're what the good part of it is, and it was better back then from that standpoint, is your name got out there, so you became more relevant.
That's
So it was
fair.
up to, but a lot of the guys knew that they were being brought in for that reason that you said. And it's
Yeah,
up
check
to, and in that case,
box.
in that case, it's up to the individual. Is it worth it? Is it worth it to get a higher profile? In the case of Leslie Frazier, he eventually became a head coach. It worked. He got a higher profile out of it because everybody would interview Leslie Frazier just to satisfy the Rooney Rule, and he eventually became a head coach. So it's up to the individual, but yeah, it's untoward, and there's a lot of problems with that rule that people think it's altruistic. It's a lot of it is just checking boxes.
Yeah, well, that's a part of it when you make a rule like that. It is what it is. I understand what they're trying to do. I'm not saying that. I'm sure this has been a conversation that's happened well before my time, it sounds like. I don't need to get into all that today. Got good stuff there, John. We're going to talk to Devin Jackson in a little bit. I'm looking forward to see what Devin has to say. I did check out his article on the Inquirer. Devin, he's a great writer. I love the way Devin writes. I'm looking forward to seeing what the upcoming draft stuff here next couple of days or a couple of weeks that we got. With the Senior Bowl coming up. I think the Senior Bowl is like a week and a half. Is it next weekend, John?
I gotta look at
next week, and then it's it finishes up on the weekend or something.
Yeah, the Shrine Bowl is this week.
Shrine Bowl this week. We got to get on. We got to get Rick Saratello on. He loves this stuff too.
Senior Bowl is Saturday, January 31st, but the more important part are the practices, which are January 27th to 29th. Clint Hurt is the head coach of the national team, and he's also bringing Jamal Singleton down to be the offensive coordinator. So the Eagles should get a good look at the couple other support staff people as well. So they should get a very good look because Clint's going to be running the practices and all that.
Yeah, all right, good stuff there. So we're going to see what's on the slate for this Eagles team here this summer. Going to be interesting to see. A lot of storylines, John. Feels like more so than ever. I guess selfishly, John, and people aren't going to like this, but it's just the truth of the matter. All right, the truth is the truth, whether you like it or not. When the Eagles lose in the way that they did, it gives us a lot more to cover here in the off season, as opposed to when they win it all and everyone's like, "Oh, they hired this guy. Who cares? They're champions. Who cares? They're champions." There's no more chase, John.
I've been saying it for years. The NFL off season is far more interesting than in season, to me anyway. Far more interesting. The games are like. The machinations are far more interesting, which is part of the popularity of the league and the way they set up the calendar. I criticize the NFL a lot. What I don't is how they set up the calendar because it goes seamlessly.
Yeah.
The only real lull is between mandatory mini camp and training camp where you have like a 6-week vacation.
Late June or early July.
I mean, you go straight from the season, the Super Bowl, you go straight into getting ready for free agency, and then the draft, and then you're back on the field for OTAs, rookie camp, OTAs, mini camp. And yeah, when you're not the champions, it's more interesting because you got a lot of shit to fix.
Yep.
And that's where the Eagles are.
The chase is back on.
Yeah. And they tend, by the way, and Howie doesn't like to admit it, but the human nature aspect of winning the Super Bowl takes off some of the edge. You're going to see the urgency ramp up for this team, which is, I think, a good thing for fans because they will be trying to fix shit. as you're already seeing with the coaching
Yeah.
staff.
Not so easy. I mean, it's not so easy when everybody's paid big money. Like the offensive line. That's a perfect example. Everybody's focused on fixing the O line. I agree with everybody. I was talking to my boy Curtis about this the other day. Fix the O line, fix the O line, fix the running game. That's the most important thing when you play offense this way. I agree. Well, how do you do it when you have an $18 million center, a $21 million left guard who just aren't playing up to what they're supposed to play up to? You're not going to trade them. You're not going to bench them. You're not going to draft a guy to replace a 27-year-old guard you just paid. I mean, right? It's not that simple of a fix outside of, well, I hope Cam and Landon return to form next year.
Well, it's like a Caden Proctor, who's the first name that Devin mentioned, and you talked about him a little bit. To me, that's the perfect example of, well, is he an upgraded guard? And before he kicks out to right tackle, as you did when you talk about where did Cam Jurgens start? He didn't start at center. He started at guard, and then he kicked in when Kelsey finally retired. That's what you're looking for, and that's what they have been looking for. There was a lot of talk last year leading up to the draft. Will they take an offensive lineman that can start and replace Mekhi Becton and then kick out to replace Lane Johnson? That was the talk last year. It's the talk 2 years prior before Mekhi Becton. Nobody knew Mekhi Becton would have the season Mekhi Becton had. It's been the overriding theme for like 3 years. Now you have more complications because you do not. They signed EJ Jenkins to a futures contract, but Dallas Goedert's a free agent. Grant Calcaterra's a free agent. Colin Granson's a free agent. You don't have a tight end, so you get the kid from Oregon, Sadiq. Big time player, more of a receiving tight end as most tight ends are now. That might bring some juice to this offense.
Any chance Goddard returns? Small, right?
I think it's very small from the perspective of like where's that path? He played at a level that somebody will give him a decent amount of money in probably 2 years. And the Eagles, again, need to open up money for the defensive side of the ball. They already made him take a $4 million pay cut. So he's probably not amenable to giving him a deal. People talk, well, maybe you'll have a player friendly. He took $4 million less to come back last year. He's probably going to want a financial apology, as Donovan McNabb would say.
Financial apology.
No, I don't see any way Dallas Goedert is coming back. I just, the business part of it makes little sense for either side. And I'm sure he'd like to come back. This is the only professional home he's known. And he's had a lot of success. So if you take all the business stuff out of it, I'm sure he'd like to be back. But you can't take the business out of it. And he's 31 years old. Does that sound like the Eagles are giving out 2 years and big money to a 31-year-old?
No.
Especially when they need the money for the defense?
He's going to end up in Kansas City.
Maybe. Eric Bieniemy back in Kansas City.
Yeah, I saw that.
By the way, a lot of those I mentioned with Detroit, with Drew Petzing and Kansas City now with Eric Bieniemy. It's good that some of these offensive coordinator jobs are getting populated with people that the Eagles don't seem to have interest in. That's positive.
What do you think of the hire? What do you think of the hire of Drew Petzing? I thought that was interesting. Not what I expected the Lions to do.
Yeah, good coach. Everybody says wonderful things about him. Obviously, Arizona things didn't work out with Arizona, but if you look at Trey McBride and some of the things they were able to be offensively, despite having Jacoby Brissett,
right?
I think he's better. He's more well regarded than people think. Who just look at, well, Arizona's not very good. Why did they go in that direction?
Oh, he had some success with JAKIB Sports late in the year. I mean,
Yeah, I think a lot of people look at him, and it's interesting. Dan Campbell, whatever, said something about not being the proper fit. Mike McDaniel,
yeah.
Whatever. I mean, he's kind of eclectic. I don't know if he's the proper fit here. I don't know if Philadelphia's going to like Mike McDaniel if they go that direction, but we'll see.
Yeah. I think he would have been a good fit, McDaniel, in Detroit. I disagree with Dan Campbell. I think Dan's obviously in love with like the persona and the culture, but I don't know. I think Mike would have worked pretty well in that offense with those playmakers. But we will see what happens.